troops loyal to Vespasian. AD 70 Revolt of the Batavi. Following a series of battlefield reversals, Civilis accepted peace terms from the Roman general Quintus Petilius Cerealis. September Siege of Jerusalem. 70 CE The Roman general Titus breached the walls of Jerusalem, sacked the city and destroyed the Second Temple. AD 71 Roman conquest of Britain. Roman forces entered modern Scotland. AD 7316 April Siege of Masada. Roman forces breached the walls of Masada, a mountain fortress held by the Jewish extremist sect the Secretu. AD 77 Gnaeus Julius Agricola was appointed consul and governor of Britain. AD 7923 June Vespasian died. He was succeeded by his son Titus. 24 August Eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79. Mount Vesuvius erupted, destroying the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. AD 80 Rome was partially destroyed by fire. March the Colosseum was completed. AD 8113 September Titus died of fever. He was succeeded by his younger brother Domitian. AD 85 Agricola was recalled to Rome. AD 86 Domitian's Dacian War. The Dacian king Dysbalus invaded Moesia. AD 88 Domitian's Dacian War. Dysbalus agreed to return all Roman prisoners of war and accept this status as a Roman client in exchange for an annual subsidy of 8 million sestertii, ending the war. AD 891 January Lucius Antonius Saturninus, governor of Germania Superior, revolted against Domitian's rule. Saturninus was executed. AD 9618 September Domitian was assassinated by members of the royal household. Nerva was declared ruler of Rome by the Senate. AD 97 Nerva adopted the general and former consul Trajan as his son. AD 9827 January Nerva died and was succeeded by Trajan. 2nd century. 112 Trajan's Forum was inaugurated. 113 Roman-Parthian Wars. Trajan launched an expedition against Parthia. Trajan's column was erected in Trajan's Forum to commemorate the victory over Dacia. 114 Trajan deposed the Armenian king Partamaceres of Armenia, a Roman client, and organized a province of Armenia on his territory. 115 Kitto's War. The Jews in Syrian rose up against Roman authority. 116 The provinces of Mesopotamia and Assyria were organized on territory conquered from Parthia. Trajan captured the Parthian capital Ctesiphon and deposed its Shah Osrhoes I in favor of his on Partamaspes of Parthia. 117 Kitto's War. Roman forces captured the rebel stronghold of Lod and executed many of its inhabitants. 8 August Trajan died. 10 August the Senate accepted the general Hadrian as ruler of Rome, following the appearance of documents indicating he had been adopted by Trajan. Osrhoes I deposed his son Partamaspes of Parthia and replaced him as Shah of Parthia. 118 Hadrian withdrew from the territories of Armenia, Assyria and Mesopotamia, allowing their turn of their respective client monarchies. 119 A rebellion took place in Britain which was suppressed by Quintus Pomptus Falco. 122 The construction of Hadrian's Wall at the northern border of Britain began. 123 Hadrian arrived in Mauritania to suppress a local revolt. 124 Hadrian traveled to Greece. 126 Hadrian returned to Rome. The rebuilt Pantheon was dedicated to Agrippa, its original builder. 132 Bar Kokhba revolt. Simon Bar Kokhba, believed by his followers to be the Messiah, launched a revolt against Roman authority in Judea. 135 Bar Kokhba revolt. The revolt ended at a cost of tens of thousands of Roman soldiers and some 600,000 Jewish rebels and civilians, including Bar Kokhba, killed. Judea and Syria were combined into the single province of Syria Palestina. 136 Hadrian adopted Lucius Aelius as his son and successor. 1381 January Lucius Aelius died. 25 February Hadrian adopted Antoninus Pius as his son and successor and granted him tribunician power and imperium, on the condition that he in turn adopt Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus as his sons. 10 July Hadrian died, probably from congestive heart failure. 11 July Antoninus succeeded Hadrian. 141 Roman conquest of Britain. Roman forces invaded modern Scotland under the command of British governor Quintus Lollius Urbicus. 142 The construction of the Antonine Wall at the northern border of Britain began. 1617 March Antoninus died. He was succeeded by Marcus and Lucius Verus. Roman-Parthian War of 161–166. The Parthian Empire deposed the Armenian king Soemus of Armenia, a Roman client, and installed Baker. 165 Antonine Plague, a pandemic, probably of smallpox or measles, began, which would kill some 5 million people throughout the Roman Empire. 166 Roman-Parthian War of 161–166. Roman forces sacked the Parthian capital Ctesiphon. 169 Lucius Verus died of disease, leaving Marcus the sole ruler of Rome. Marcomannic Wars, a coalition of Germanic tribes led by the Marcomanni invaded the Roman Empire across the Danube. 175 Marcomannic Wars. Rome and the Iazyges signed a treaty under which the latter agreed to return Roman prisoners of war and supply troops to the Auxilia, ending the war. 177 Marcus named his natural son Commodus co-ruler with himself. 18017 March Marcus died. Antonine Plague. The pandemic ended. 184 The Antonine War was abandoned by Roman forces. 19231 December Commodus was strangled to death. 1931 January The Praetorian Guard acclaimed the consul Pertinax ruler of Rome at the Castra Praetoria. 28 March Pertinax was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard acclaimed the former consul Didius Julianus, who had provided the highest bid, ruler of Rome. 9 April Pescennius Niger, the legatus Augusti pro praetor of Syria Palestina, was proclaimed ruler of Rome by his legions. 14 April The Legio 14 Gemina acclaimed its commander Septimius Severus ruler of Rome at Carnuntum. May the Senate recognized Septimius Severus as ruler of Rome and sentenced Julianus Todius. 194 Battle of Ischius. 194 Niger's forces were decisively defeated by the armies of Septimius Severus at Ischius. 196 Claudius Albinus, the commander of Roman troops in Britain and Iberia, took the title Imperator Caesar Decimus Claudius Septimius Albinus Augustus. 19719 February Battle of Lugdunum. Septimius Severus and Albinus met in battle at Lugdunum. Albinus committed suicide or was killed. Roman-Parthian Wars. Septimius Severus sacked the Parthian capital Ctesiphon. 198 Septimius Severus appointed his eldest natural son Caracalla co-ruler with himself. 3rd century. Year date event 208 Roman invasion of Caledonia 208–210. Septimius Severus invaded modern Scotland. 209 Septimius Severus named his youngest natural son Publius Septimius Getae co-ruler with himself and Caracalla. 2114 February Septimius Severus died. Roman invasion of Caledonia 208–210. Caracalla ended the campaign. 26 December Getae was murdered in his mother's arms by members of the Praetorian Guard loyal to Caracalla. 212 Constitutio Antoniniana was an edict issued by Caracalla declaring that all free men in the Roman Empire were to be given full Roman citizenship and that all free women in the empire were to be given the same rights as Roman women. 2178 April Caracalla was assassinated by a member of his bodyguard. The Praetorian Guard acclaimed their prefect Macrinus ruler of Rome. 2188 June Macrinus was captured and executed by an army loyal to Elagabalus, supposedly the illegitimate son of Caracalla. 22211 March Elagabalus was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard, which installed his young cousin Severus Alexander as ruler of Rome. 230 Roman-Persian Wars. The Sasanian Shah Ardashir I invaded Mesopotamia and Syria. 232 Roman-Persian Wars. Alexander repelled the Sasanian invasion. 23519 March Alexander was killed in a mutiny of the Legio XXII Primigenia at Mainz. 20 March the army elected Maximinus Thrax, commander of the Legio IV Italica, ruler of Rome. 23822 March Gordian I, governor of Africa, accepted the rule of Rome at the urging of rebels in his province. He appointed his son Gordian II to rule jointly with him. 2 April the Senate accepted Gordian I and Gordian II as rulers of Rome. Battle of Carthage. 238 forces loyal to Gordian I and Gordian II were defeated by the army of Capellianus, the governor of Numidia, who claimed fealty to Maximinus. Gordian II was killed. Gordian I committed suicide. 22 April the Senate elected two senators, Pupienus and Balbinus, as joint rulers of the empire. Facing popular opposition to Pupienus and Balbinus, the Senate gave Gordian I's young grandson Gordian III the title Caesar. May Maximinus was murdered with his son during a mutiny of the Legio II Parthica at Aquileia. 29 July Pupienus and Balbinus were tortured and murdered by the Praetorian Guard in their barracks. 243 Battle of Ricina. Roman forces defeated the Sasanian Empire at Ricina. 244 Battle of Mizige. The Sasanian Empire decisively defeated a Roman force at Mizige, near modern Fallujah. Gordian III was killed, probably by a fellow Roman. He was succeeded by Philip the Arab, the prefect of the Praetorian Guard, who was forced to cede Mesopotamia and Armenia to the Sasanian Empire. 249 Philip was killed at Verona in battle with Decius, commander of Roman forces in Pannonia and Moesia. 251 Decius appointed his natural son Hyrnius Etruscus co-ruler of Rome jointly with himself. Battle of Abritus. Roman forces were dealt a bloody defeat by the Goths near modern Razgrad. Decius and Hyrnius were killed. The armies of the Danube region acclaimed their commander Trebonianus Gallus ruler of Rome. The Senate recognized Decius's son Hostilian as ruler of Rome. Gallus adopted Hostilian Ash's son. Plague of Cyprian. Hostilian died, probably of plague. Gallus appointed his natural son Volusianus co-ruler jointly with himself. 253 Battle of Barbalissos. A Sasanian force destroyed a Roman army at Barbalissos. August Gallus and Volusianus were killed in a mutiny at Terni. The army acclaimed Aemilianus governor of Pannonia and Moesia, ruler of Rome. Aemilianus was killed by his own soldiers in the face of the army of the general Valerian, emperor. 22 October Valerian gave his son Gallienus the title Caesar. 256 The Sasanian Empire conquered and sacked Antioch. 257 Valerian reconquered Antioch. 258 The Goths invaded Asia Minor. 260 Death of Dacian king Regalianus that became Roman emperor for a brief period. 260 Valerian was taken prisoner by the Sasanian Empire during truce negotiations. September The general Postumus was declared ruler of Rome in the Gallic Empire. 264 Valerian died in captivity. 267 Odeonathus, the king of Palmyra and a Roman client, was assassinated. His widow Zenobia took power as regent for their son Vibulathus. 268 Gallienus was murdered by his soldiers during a siege of Pontirolo Nuovo. September The general Claudius Gothicus was declared ruler of Rome by his soldiers. 269 Postumus was killed by his soldiers, who in turn acclaimed one of their own, Marcus Aurelius Marius, emperor of the Gallic Empire. Marius was murdered by Victorinus, formerly prefect of Postumus's Praetorian Guard, who replaced him as emperor of the Gallic Empire. Zenobia conquered Egypt. Battle of Nisus. Roman forces decisively defeated the Goths at Modena, stalling an invasion of the Balkans. 270 January Claudius Gothicus died. He was succeeded by his brother Quintillus. April Quintillus died at Aquileia. September Aurelian became ruler of Rome. 271 Battle of Phano. A Roman force defeated the Juthungi on the Metoro. Victorinus was murdered by an officer he had cuckolded. Tetricus I, Preces of Gallia Aquitanea, was acclaimed emperor of the Gallic Empire. He appointed his natural son Tetricus II to rule jointly with him. 272 Zenobia was arrested en route to refuge in the Sasanian Empire. 273 Palmyra rebelled against Roman authority and was destroyed. 274 Battle of Chalons. 274 Aurelian defeated the forces of Tetricus I and Tetricus II at modern Chalons en Champagne. 275 September Aurelian was murdered by the Praetorian Guard. 25 September the Senate elected Tacitus, emperor, ruler of Rome. 276 June Tacitus died. Marcus Aurelius Probus, commander of Roman forces in the east and Tacitus's half-brother, was acclaimed ruler of Rome by his troops. Florianus, prefect of the Praetorian Guard and commander of Roman forces in the west, was acclaimed ruler of Rome by his troops. September Florianus was assassinated near Tarsus by his troops following a defeat at the hands of Probus. 279 Probus launched a campaign against the Vandals in Illyricum. 282 The Praetorian Guard elected their prefect Carus ruler of Rome. Probus was assassinated. Carus gave his sons Carinus and Numerian the title Caesar. 283 Carus died. 284 Numerian died. 20 November Roman forces in the east elected the consul Diocletian their ruler and proclaimed him Augustus. 285 July Battle of the Margus. Forces loyal to Diocletian defeated Carinus in battle on the Morava. Carinus was killed. July Diocletian gave Maximian the title Caesar. 286 Carausian revolt. The naval commander Carausius declared himself emperor in Britain and northern Gaul. 2 April Diocletian proclaimed Maximian Augustus of the West, ruling himself as Augustus of the East. 293 Diocletian established the Tetrarchy, appointing Constantius Chlorus to hold the office of Caesar under Maximian in the west and Gallus to hold the title under himself in the east. Carausian revolt. Constantius Chlorus conquered Carausius's Gallic territories. Carausius was murdered by his finance minister Alectus, who replaced him as emperor in Britain. 296 Carausian revolt. Alectus was defeated in battle and killed at Corleva Atrebatum. 4th century. Year date event 301 Diocletian issued the edict on maximum prices, reforming the currency and setting price ceilings on a number of goods. 30324 February Diocletianic persecution. Diocletian issued his first edict against Christians, calling forth the destruction of Christian holy books and places of worship and stripping Christians of their government positions and political rights. 3051 May Diocletian and Maximian abdicated. Constantius and Gallus were elevated to Augusti in the west and east. Gallus appointed Flavius Valerius Severus Caesar in the west and Maximinus II Caesar in the east. 30625 July Constantius died at Eboracum. By his dying wish, his troops acclaimed his son Constantine the Great Augustus. Gallus recognized Flavius Valerius Severus as Augustus in the west and granted Constantine the Great the lesser title of Caesar, which he accepted. Civil Wars of the Tetrarchy. Rioters in Rome acclaimed Maximian's son Maxentius ruler of Rome. He took the title Princeps Invictus, undefeated prince. Maxentius invited Maximian to reclaim the title Augustus. 307 Civil Wars of the Tetrarchy. Flavius Valerius Severus surrendered to Maximian at Ravenna. Civil Wars of the Tetrarchy. Galerius laid siege to Rome. Many of his soldiers defected to Maxentius and he was forced to flee. 308 Civil Wars of the Tetrarchy. After a failed coup against his son Maxentius, Maximian was forced to flee to Constantine's court. 11 November Maximian resigned as Augustus. Galerius appointed Licinius Augustus of the West and confirmed his recognition of Constantine the Great as Caesar of the West. 310 July Civil Wars of the Tetrarchy. Maximian was forced to commit suicide.